In this video, we're going to introduce weathering, erosion, and deposition, which is a precursor to soil. Now, weathering is the process that breaks down rock and other substances. The focus for weathering is it's a breaking or wearing down. The first type of weathering is mechanical weathering. Another name for mechanical weathering is physical weathering, because this is a physical change. It's still the same substance. So the focus here is that a rock can be broken, it can be scratched at, but it's still the same rock. It's not chemically changing. The first type of mechanical weathering can be seen through the action of wind. Now, wind is going to be our first factor or our first agent of mechanical weathering. And the wind can use sand particles or other particles to smash up against a rock and wear it down. But there's a term for scratching, and that term is abrasion. And we'll talk about that in our next video. Another type of mechanical weathering is ice. Think of glaciers. You also have frost wedging, when the water seeps in, freezes, expands, and kind of becomes that wedge to push open the rock. Another type of physical weathering agent would be heat. It could be heat versus cold. And if a rock is swelling and then contracting and expanding and starts breaking, and this peeling off or breaking is called exfoliation. Another type of physical weathering is biological weathering. And we're going to talk about two types of biological weathering, and that's going to be plants and animals. Biological means life, so anything that is living, but specifically we're going to focus on plants and animals. As you can see here, plants, if the seed is inside a crack of a rock, it then grows, it can split that rock up. And then you have animals digging through, maybe burrowing, making little holes, and they're going to dig up perhaps rock and soil, breaking it down into smaller little sediments. Now we're going to move on into chemical weathering. We're still in weathering, but this is going to be focusing on a chemical change. So one rock is turning into a new rock. One example of that is dissolution. Think of the word solution. And so basically that solution, that water has different chemicals in there, and it's going to react with the rock. Perhaps it's very acidic. One great example of that would be caves. Stalagmites are on the ground. Think of the G for ground. And then stalactite. Think of C for ceiling and T for top. Then we have lichen and moss. Specifically, the green ones there are moss. Moss secretes a chemical to help break down the rock. Then we're going to now move away from weathering, and we're going to move to erosion. Now remember, weathering was the breakdown. Erosion is the movement. So we want to separate these. Weathering and erosion can both be caused by wind, water, gravity, and animals. So there's a lot of overlap in the agents that can cause this. But be aware that the key words here for erosion is movement, transporting. So here we have water is going to weather, break apart. The water will then, from the wave and the ocean, will then move the sediments away from the shoreline. That would then be erosion. Flooding, if the water picks up soil, picks up sand, picks up sediments, and moves it from point A to point B, that would be specifically erosion. When water kind of runs off a ledge or goes over a ledge, this can be small or it can be large, like a waterfall. That would be called runoff. Glaciers, ice can do this. Wind through sandstorms or dust storms. Gravity can cause rock slides, mudslides. Now let's move to the last one that we're going to focus on is deposition. Think of deposit. Deposit means to drop off. If I deposit my money in the bank, I'm going to drop it off. The Louisiana Delta, so think about Louisiana. Now, a delta is basically the landform that's created from the deposition. Louisiana is slowly getting larger because of the deposition. Here's basically if we have sand, silt, a lot of rocks falling from or sliding down from a mountain. This can create a little alluvial fan. A sandbar would be a great example of deposition, where water drops off some sand and creates this little miniature island. The sand dune, or the pattern that it makes. Here are some sediments left behind from glaciers. Rivers are going to be performing both erosion and deposition and weathering. So on the inside of the curve, we have deposition. On the outside, we have a lot of erosion.